Well, thank you for joining this episode of Build by Humans. It's a podcast where we talk about the human side of software development, product development. We all know there's lots of tools, there's a lot of technologies, and people like to talk about it. But at the end of the day, it's still people, it's still the same human beings that were there a week ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, and will still be there tomorrow. That's what we talk about. How do we all work together, how we communicate, how we manage projects, and all the fun stuff.
Great.
Introduce yourself, please.
Cool. Hi, Zhenya. Thanks for having me here. My name is Giorgos. I come from Greece. I live in London, UK, and I'm a product engineer with more than 22 years of experience. The last 7, 8 years, I've been in senior leadership roles. Been an engineering leader, product engineering leader, and in fintech. I've passed through Tide. I was a very early employee at Tide, financial services platform in London. I joined as a ninth engineer to a 25th employee, and I left Tide when Tide was too big, 2,300 people and close to 500 people in engineering. And then I went through a bank, sourcing at a bank as a VP of engineering and CTPO. And since last year, I'm operating as a fractional technologist. And, I have my own clients.
Awesome. So you are from Greece and you moved to London or UK. So this podcast is obviously a fun project, right? Something that I do because I think it's important. I think it's fun. My main business is I run a company called Mirigas. We are a team augmentation, staff augmentation company. What we do is we help companies hire internationally really strong software engineers. And all of our hiring is done in Europe and Latin America. Those are two areas we focus on. We actually started in Europe. That was our only area for many, many years. And then we expanded in Latin America for obvious reasons, right? Time difference, certain proximity to US clients. A lot of our clients are US. One thing that we always see, and it's getting better and better, and I really like to see that it's getting much better, but different cultures. Here in US is a huge country, and most people are used to working with people from the same country, right? So culture is somewhat, granted, right? It's an immigrant country, so there's a lot of people coming from all over the world, but at the end of the day, they all come to the same office or used to come to the same office. Then we went remote, everybody went remote, and today the remote is, one person is from Brazil, another person is from Argentina, and the third person is from Poland, right? And that's a team. Europe is a lot more mixed. And Europe has big cultural differences, right? Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Greece is very different from UK, very different from Poland, very different from Spain. How do you find this? How do you guys work across all these multiple cultures? The 4-hour siesta in Spain doesn't exist in UK. How does it work?
Yeah. So I will start with the last thing that you said, because everybody thinks that, for example, in Greece that we have siestas as well. That's a myth. That's not it doesn't actually happen. For in Greece, you actually work like from literally the longest hours across Europe. So
Interesting.
I wouldn't say that's actually the truth there. But look, I mean, I started working in Greece long time ago.
Mhm.
Obviously in Athens, Greece. So in Athens, Greece, back then in the 90s, it wasn't very multicultural. You had like people like the different culture was actually North Greece and South Greece, or the islands. That's a
Right.
different culture, right?
Yeah.
That's what we consider different culture. So we weren't used to work with foreigners. So when I came to UK, the first time I came to UK around 2003, it took me a while to get used to the fact that actually not everybody understands not my language, what I'm saying, but my humor, my sarcasm.
Mhm.
It's a different thing, and it took me a while. It took me like a couple of years to get used to it, but then I adapted, and then obviously I started working in London, which is the most multicultural city, and you never go back because you get used to it. And all the
Right.
companies that I worked since then in UK and London, they're very multicultural. Because of the reasons you just said. So it's not, I don't think of it this way now. Like actually, I would probably it will be very awkward if I go to a company where everybody's from the same place now.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very natural, but you need to learn how to interact or not interact in some cases, in some ways.
So you move to UK and you over the time you become British, right? So you become somebody who lives in UK. And so the culture now is international and everything. But I'm sure you work with people that are still remote. One of the challenges that we see, right? And this is the challenge in management. We as I've been managing for 30 some years, people, and we as managers expect certain behavior and expect certain standards, and sometimes we don't communicate what those expectations are. Hey, I am in the office from 9 to 5.
Mm.
Therefore, I expect you're in office from 9 to 5, or at least you're working from 9 to 5. Where some other people go, I'm just going to work for a few hours, take 3 hour break, and then come back and work again. Doesn't make them less productive, doesn't make them work less hours. It's just different style. And so, those examples. Or we see this a lot between Latin America and Europe, commitment, right? Or argument. In Latin America, people are a lot more likely to say, yeah, I think I can get this done. Tell me what to do. Where in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, they're going to argue with you. They're going to tell you your decision is wrong, and then they're going to go do their own thing. And then you're like, oh, God, that's not what I wanted, or it's not how I wanted. Right? Maybe it is what I wanted, but that's how I wanted. So how do you work that out as a manager, right? As a technologist, as an advisor, right? You work with all these different companies. You run across this all the time.
So these two things you mentioned here, both of them, they fall under ways of working to me. So
Mhm.
as a manager, I don't focus on when somebody is working or where is somebody working from. I do like coming to the office myself, and I obviously there's a lot of value in face-to-face collaboration, but it's almost impossible these days because there's always going to be somebody who's not from in the country or is working from home. So it's almost impossible. So you need to learn to not focus on the
Right.
outputs, focus on the outcomes that the people produce. If you focus on the outcomes, then there's less need to micromanagement, and people should be held accountable for these outcomes, delivering these outcomes. And yes,
Right.
people will miss delivering certain things. There's always things that will happen. So the way I manage is by setting the expectations of my working style, what I expect, which is commitment. And when you say you're going to do one thing, do it. And if something goes wrong and you can't do it, like you cannot deliver, just
Mhm.
let it, not necessarily me, let the people who need to know as early as possible so we can see like what else we can do to actually course correct things, because things will go wrong selling software development. That's the one thing that doesn't change. And there's always unknown unknowns. So I like to focus on the outcomes rather than the outputs. And I don't care where people go. However, having said that, all companies that have like some policies, right? That you need to be
Yeah.
exactly because, we need to have some overlap, especially when you're talking about time zones. They tend to set policies, and then if the company has a policy, then we need to follow it. It's not like down to the manager to do differently. And
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And the
so-
policies are important. Expectations are important, right?
and there's some lenience, of course. Like it's not like we're not going always by the book dogmatically. There's going to be some exceptions, but they have to be the
Yeah.
exception. And the other thing was, again, ways of working. Like, how do you get agreement? Yeah, and you're right. Like some countries, like they say yes to everything. And I'm from the Balkans, right? So I'm Greek. So I'm from Greece. So I was notorious when I was working that I will never commit to something if I don't understand everything that I need to do,
Right.
because I protect myself. So I try to, for me, communication is key, like clarity and communication between the teams and team members is key. And I like arguments. I like people pushing back, but I don't like plain opinions, just opinions. I like opinions that are backed by data
They're
and that
based right, exactly. Yeah.
evidence and data. So if you come to me if you want to challenge my opinion, more than happy to do it. But you need to come with some data. So I would not use hierarchy unless somebody's being unreasonable.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned argument. I'm from Eastern Europe originally. I was born in Ukraine, but I've lived in US now for 35 years. I encourage argument. I encourage discussion, right? I don't know if I want to call it argument, even though it is, but it's a discussion.
I say
Yeah.
conflict, conflict.
Conflict, yeah, healthy conflict is good, right? And I remember working, I was a VP at one of the companies, and we hired a new director who was working for me, and we were in the management meetings, like four or five directors sitting there, we're all talking, and this new person goes, yes, 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 yes to everything. And everybody else argues with me. And after the meeting, he comes in, or comes up to one of the guys that's been working for me for a long time and goes, I don't understand this. You're all arguing with him, and he seems to be enjoying this, as opposed to I'm agreeing and he's sort of ignoring me. And this guy goes, well, if he wanted you to agree, he wouldn't ask you a question. He can agree with himself. Right? What's the point? And then the whole idea is a discussion. The whole idea is like, let's come up with the best decision. Mine is not necessarily the best decision. It's an opinion, and I think this is the right way to do it. But tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm happy to change
Yeah.
it. Let's talk a bit about hiring. What do you pay attention to? And I don't know if that changed in a remote world or it doesn't for you, but let's say when you're hiring somebody and interviewing them, what's important?
Yeah. So obviously the skills, the actual skills, that what we call hard skills, like,
Mhm.
if you're a software engineer, like, can he actually do the job? That's probably like the one thing that we definitely need to know. However, people come at different shapes and sizes, so it's not like and talents as well. So I wouldn't say like I have hired people who didn't meet my technical skill criteria, but they were very talented and they were promising. And yes, there was a risk when I hired them, but actually,
Mhm.
it paid off. The one thing that I will never bend on is the behaviors, like the soft skills, what we say called soft skills. So, because that's a difficult part. The difficult things that you cannot alter them, you cannot change them easily.
Right.
So I wouldn't. I'll give an example. There was a guy who interviewed with me. I was observing the interview. It was with him and two of my senior engineers together. They were doing like I think it was like system design or something. And he was being a bit, not a bit, actually quite a lot disrespectful to my team members, like my people, right? And but he was probably stronger than them. But he was being very disrespectful. Like he was basically shutting them down. He was very good fit at the technical level,
Technical, right.
probably beyond my expectation at technical level, but he was way, way lower there on the other side. And we didn't hire him. I stopped the interview,
Mhm.
thanked him and then, we let him go.
Uh,
So
I'm
that's
very glad you're saying this. Yeah.
the respect for me is very high level. And, there's a few other things that, they go together, like respect, knowing how to collaborate, knowing how to speak. Can't hire somebody who doesn't want to speak with others or doesn't want to
Right.
collaborate, right?
I think it's incredibly important you're touching on this. I am the same way. It seems like we've finished the same management school or the same people management school.
It's actually leadership. It's not management. This is
It's,
leadership.
it is. Right? Well, it's both, right? Management is how you do things. Leadership is what you naturally are, right? I don't know if you can learn leadership, right? Actually, do you think you can? Can you learn to become a leader, or is that a natural behavior?
I think you can learn to become a better leader.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I'm not sure if I think everybody has leadership. I think is within everyone. It's just how you express your leadership style. What's your leadership style? That's the
Yeah.
problem. Well, management is it's a role, right? Leadership is not a role.
You can be a leader and not be a manager, and you can be a
And
manager and be a horrible leader.
actually, the best leaders are not managers.
True, true. Early in my career, when I worked in larger companies and in corporate, I've seen so many times when a company will take their best engineer and promote them to manager, and
That,
that person is not a leader, and they just killed two positions. They lost their best engineer, and they
yeah,
didn't get a good manager.
yeah, that's happening quite a lot these days. I know companies that do that. I know companies that did it overnight, and it's a disaster. It's a disaster because
Absolutely.
then you demotivate everyone. You put people in positions that they don't want to do.
I see so many, and, we do this, we do hundreds of interviews a month, right? So we do this, we see this all the time. And I see so many times when companies will pay attention to specific technical skills and not ability, not the personality, not the right fit. So our whole, at Mirigus, our whole model is we help you find the right fit person, not the right technical skills. We obviously find you the right technical skills. Right? That's sort of obvious. But we find you the right fit. And that means if you have somebody who may not know the exact technology you're working with, but they have proven themselves that they've learned so many different other things, and you can see that they're thinking right, their logic is there, their ability is there, they'll learn. But if somebody is not a fit for your team, like you said, right, like you had in your interview, that's not going to change.
Mhm. Exactly. I think it depends on also on the what is the urgency? Like, why are you hiring that person? Like, why are you hiring for that role?
Mhm.
Sometimes, and I'm being very transparent here. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of waiting for somebody to bloom. So you need them.
Sure.
You need them ready. So sometimes I've done both. So I've hired for both for because I needed that skill tomorrow. I need people who can hit the ground running, like start
Absolutely.
But then I
Absolutely.
hired people who didn't know even the tech stack, and then hired them with the option that they will. I knew that they will migrate to the tech stack that we had.
Going back to interview, you have a lot of experience obviously doing this. What do you focus on? I mean, it's very easy to interview for technical skills, right? You can ask questions, you can have them code in front of you. You can do so many things. But how do you find out the personality? How do you find out if they're the right fit? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a tricky bit. Like, how can you interview? How can you see the behaviors, and especially when you interview remotely as well, because
Hmm. Hmm.
come to the office necessarily. You see it through the interactions, and that's why I don't like having one person interviewing. Okay, so the interview process needs to be lean because you need to hire somebody fast. You can't have somebody like going through like 10 interview steps and then hoping that they're not get bored or they're not going to be hired by somebody else, right? So you need to be lean. So you need to find the right balance between the right steps where you invite somebody in an interview, remote or face to face. You put them in front of a couple of people, not one person. Do like a proper technical interview. The technical interview for me, it was never actually about, let's say, like when I was doing iOS, for example, it was never about Swift. Yes, we will ask the Swift questions and everything, like, do you know the language? It was more about like, can you actually work with us? So it was more like, okay, let's do refactoring together.
Hmm.
This is how we interview people. Let's do a refactoring together and let's work together because through that you get two birds with one stone. I see like how the people think like technically, but I
Right.
also see how they can collaborate with others. And this is actually the example I gave earlier. This is
Very,
how
yes.
because I had two people interviewing that person. By accident, I was there because I usually don't observe interviews, but I had some free time and I said, okay, because I wanted to meet that guy, like to see him. I was there. But usually the interviews, like I had a couple of people from my team that I trust that they know what we're looking
Hmm.
for in terms of behaviors. And then I put them together with a candidate and then they interview. And then if it's a senior role, probably there's another step, system design, like mostly same approach. And then at the end, it's going to be with me. Like I try to interview, like depends on the size of the company and how busy I am. I try to interview, like to meet, not interview necessarily, because that's not an interview. I try to meet at least for 30 minutes at every single candidate. Obviously, that doesn't scale if you work in like at tight, when we, at some point, we had 500 engineers. I wasn't able to interview everyone, but I had people who I coached, my direct reports, like, and friends by that point, who I coached, and they really knew our culture. So they did that for me. But going back to a small organization, I do that. I interview every single person because I want to ensure that we're hiring for the culture fit. And culture fit does not mean I hire people that are actually identical to me. It means like we hire people. Actually, I don't want people identical to me because I'm not, no company have multiples of me. But I hire people who actually believe they have the same values, the company values, but also my values as well as
But
one.
yeah, I think a lot of it is our values, right? Company's values, company hired us because we share the company's value. And we hire people that
Ideally,
share overall.
ideally,
Yeah.
ideally.
Ideally. Yeah, yeah. True, true, true. Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. So for example, in my thing, I'm always the first person to interview.
Hmm.
So when we hire internally, I'm the first one, right? Not the last one.
Okay.
Because I am the one that can easily say, no, it's not a fit. I don't want to waste anybody else's time. Right.
Hmm.
I can make that decision very quickly. And I do this. Even when we were in person and back in the day, people would come in, you have 4 or 5 people lined up, 30-minute interview each, right? You go in and out conference room. I would always be the first one to interview because I have the power to go in and after 30 minutes say, it's not going to work out. Forget it, right? Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my team's time. We're done. Have a good day. And I've done this many times. I'd rather be direct and rather tell people than set false expectations and waste everybody's time. You have such a tremendous experience with both distributed teams and multicultural teams and hiring for the right reasons and the right type of people. What is your recommendation? Like somebody who is just getting into it, somebody who is maybe first time manager or second time manager, and now they're running this international team. Everybody's remote. Nobody's in the office. What's your suggestion? What's your recommendation to them?
A couple of things that I didn't do early in my career and then I learned how to do is and it would have been better if somebody told me, learn how to be a good listener and don't rush into judging people before listening to them first. Especially when you're in a multicultural environment, it's an easy to misunderstand each other and easy
Hmm.
to make assumptions. And people default to the proximity. So people
Yes.
default to the one they take a sides easily, right? I've seen that a lot. Like, you take a side usually with the people who are closer to you, and then you may actually don't give justice to the people who's not close to you. That's the danger. So I'd say listen, learn to listen, and learn to treat everybody as the same. Don't let location or culture like see different. Like, for example, at Tide, we had offices and people working everywhere. One of the values we had, and I think I love that value more than the others, is one team. Like, we didn't treat anybody as different. Even contractors that work for us, we treated them as equal. Like, we didn't on decision making, on projects that they picked or worked on, we didn't treat them separately. So this is really important. That's how you create a culture where everybody's equal and behaves as one team. And I would say the other one is actually learn, I said listening, but also learn to provide clarity. And I see this with my clients. I see this with the companies that I work. The one thing that is actually killing your productivity is clarity. People are not clear usually what
Mhm.
or why they're working on a few things, and then they can't deliver on the how.
So our whole business is we hire only for long-term type work. We don't do short-term contracts. Like that's not we're not an outsourcing company, right? So we're not set up. Hey, if you need somebody for a month or 2 months or even 3 months, that's not what we do. We do this for long term. And one of the things that we always train people and we always give feedback. Just because somebody's a contractor, treat them just like you would treat your normal employee. Just because they're remote, it doesn't mean they're not as strong as somebody who's sitting next to you. You shouldn't even think about like how the financial aspect of it is completely separate from how you treat them in a project, how you treat them in a team. And many people do, and it's getting better and better. Many people do, some still don't.
Yeah. Even the small things. So I've seen a client once, and all the contractors were excluded from the emails. Like, so anything
Mhm.
that was happening in the company, anyone was a contractor or a consultant was oblivious of what's happening basically. So they
What's
didn't
happening?
have
Yeah.
any insight, which is it's a small thing you could say, but actually it's not really a small thing for that person because this is how you create loyalty.
A lot of people ask us, how do we find such a great talent? Because we are really good about finding great talent. And our secret sauce, and there's no secret to the sauce. We hire from, used to be Eastern Europe. Now it's all Europe, especially because of the movement, because of the war, because of Ukraine,
Mm.
right? So people moved all over Europe. So we still, funny enough, we still hire a lot of Ukrainians, but now they live in other countries in UK, Poland, Spain, like all over the place. But we also hire others, obviously. And we also hire from Latin America a lot. In fact, vast majority of our hiring now is Latin America. The competition to us is not another product company. It's an outsourcing company. And as people get more senior, as people get more involved, they want to matter. They want to be part of the core team. They want to be part of the decision making. They don't want to be somebody, I'm going to tell you what to do, go do this. Your opinion doesn't matter because you're a contractor, or because you're remote, or because whatever it is. And so, what we offer to our candidates, you're part of the team. You're no longer a little widget that can be moved from project to project, that can be told what to do, that's not important. And so that's exactly what you're saying, right? Treat them just like you treat every other team member. And to them, it's incredibly important. It's probably the most important factor why they choose us over somebody else.
Yeah, just because the business relationship is different, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean like everything else needs to be different.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. It was very interesting, very helpful. Thank you.